What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a Two Penny Games review, this time for Resident Evil 4, the remake. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor, Elliott.
Hello, people.
Hello, people. Ladies and gentlemen, Resident Evil 4 is out. It's here. It was probably my most anticipated game for this year right now, or at least like top 3 easily most anticipated game. And I played the whole thing over the weekend. Over the course of 2 days, I put 20 hours in and just crushed it. And I've got a lot of thoughts on it. Connor, tell me about how many hours, if you know, or if you have an idea, are you?
Well, unfortunately, Tevin, I don't have the same dedication to the podcast as you do because I did not play it for 20 hours straight. No. I played it whenever I could, which was basically all my free time because I'm really been digging this game after just getting through the Village Chief boss fight. I did it right before this podcast, so it's still fresh in my mind as being a boss fight.
Yeah. So yeah, you're probably what, 8-ish hours in?
8's probably a good number, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? My experience with Resident Evil 4 is a bit of a tricky one. First off, I don't recommend binging it like I did, because the whole game is a blur. I think you should really savor this game and take your time with it. So, Connor, I think you're doing it right by that. It's just savor it, take your time, enjoy it, all that.
I also have to especially do that because I'm on hardcore mode. In this
game are you really? Okay. Yeah, I played on standard difficulty or whatever. And to get to the meat of it here, Resident Evil 4 Remake is a tried and true remake, unlike anything we've really seen in the past couple of iterations of Remake. It doesn't offer you a new game experience like Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 3 gave you, and it doesn't go sort of off the rails like Final Fantasy VII Remake gives you. It's more aligned to sort of a Dead Space remake, but just gives you a whole lot more. It expands on the story, it regulates the tone, and gives huge quality of life updates to its gameplay and to its level design, and sort of just sharpens up and refreshes and refines everything that was great about Resident Evil 4 from back in the day, and everything that doesn't really hold up as much has all been improved here. I think when you talk about me specifically, who is a huge Resident Evil fan, but Resident Evil 4 was never like my go-to title, I don't necessarily feel revolutionized by Resident Evil 4. I actually just feel like the things that I liked about the original game, I love here, and the things that I didn't like in the original game, I just find tolerable, if just slightly annoying now. So overall, just a huge push-up in quality. Gameplay is really the king of all kings in this game. The gameplay sings from beginning to end. It's always fun. From whether you're fighting your average normal villagers at the beginning of the game to the batshit antics that happen at the end of the game. It's always fun. Whereas in the original game, I thought the island was pretty bad. In this one, I actually kind of enjoyed the island. It's very different from the rest of the game still. And probably still not my favorite part of the game, but it's still, like, it's now fun to me. Like, I enjoyed going through it and seeing all of its level gimmicks and the boss fights that played out, which I thought were trash in the first game. Here, actually holds my favorite boss fights in the game. I was at the end.
I was curious because it seems like it's I forget the name. Krauser. I'm assuming he's one of them.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah, I think he's a perfect example of what this game holds, where, like, initially the Krauser fight happens twice, right? And at first it's a cutscene with quick time events in the original game, which is now turned into a parry fight where you're fighting each other knife v knife, and it's like kind of tense and a really good test bed. It's sort of an appetizer for the full-on fight that happens later, which is awesome. So good. It's literally, it went from one of the most annoying fights in the original game to my favorite fight in this game. I love it so much. Speaking of the parry mechanic, I'm a little like half in, half out on, where I enjoy having it I enjoy having it as an opportunity to get myself out of a tough situation if I get cornered and bad guy starts swinging on me. But I often found that like if I didn't need to counter, I wouldn't counter, and I would often just kind of take the hit.
I'm right there with you.
Or like force my way into like scoring a headshot or something. I just often found myself forgetting that it was even an option. Now near the end of the game, I started using it a lot more, and to crazy effects in some cases. So maybe it was just like a mind adjustment thing that I just needed to remember, like take myself out of the mindset of the original game and put myself into this one. But just overall, like the counter is nice. I appreciate that it's there, but it's not the most necessary thing in the world. And I don't think it's like the most satisfying thing to do either. Like it's functional. Like it's not like a Sekiro counter where like you get like heavy ting 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 and you feel real good every time you do it. It's just kind of like a, okay, I did it, like type feeling. Like I did the counter.
It's still, I think it's still, of course, really cool. It'd be nice if they continue to have that, but true, it was just it's something that I just would always think to myself after I got hit. I was like, oh, I should have used the parry. And I think
that's 100% all of my experience of the game of like, oh wait, I didn't need to get hit there. I could have parried.
Yeah, and with being on hardcore, I should probably do that more because even normal enemies take down your health pretty fast. So
I believe.
I think it is a change of mindset that's needed. One other thing, the big other addition, the stealth mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Not as hot on them as you were?
No.
I thought you'd be.
I mean, they're there.
They are.
It's a thing you can do, and it's really just like it's just an opportunity to kind of thin
the herd.
Thin the herd. Like you'll take down 1, 2, maybe 3 guys, and then alarms will go off, and you got to start shooting everybody. But I often found myself feeling like this just takes up a lot of unnecessary time. Like it doesn't make a difference. Like it's not like a stealth game like. I think of machine gun games, Wolfenstein, the new lineage of them, where like if you stealth your way through those games, you can clear entire encounters without getting caught, and reinforcements never come, and it's just a good time. Here, yeah, sure, I'll take out 1 or 2 or 3 guys, but then like doors burst open and 6 more Las Plagas come into the room, and I'm like, all right, well, now I'm just going to go guns blazing, and it was like I never even did the stealth anyway. So it wasn't a big thing for me, but did it work for you?
Yeah, I felt like, especially during my hard encounters, because I've only had 3 boss fights in the game up to this point. I'll just say it because everyone knows Resident Evil 4. The giant salamander, and the father, the village. I can call him the father. The village chief.
Yeah.
But I never really died, except for the salamander for some reason. I never really died all that much. Not at all in the village elder's case. But I found myself dying so much over and over again. Like the opening bell, the opening segment when the bell rings to take them away, but you have to hold them off. That one was incredibly difficult. Holding the house with Luis was extremely difficult. I was like at one point like,
really?
how do I get through this encounter?
Interesting.
But I was able to. It never felt like it was cheap. It just really would hit you up against the wall.
See, I had the opposite thing where the boss fights were really hard for me, but the main gameplay was usually fine. I will say this is the hardest Resident Evil game I think ever. Like this game is kind of tough in moments. Like it'll kick your ass. Like it will punish you for fucking up. Which I really, really enjoy because it's more action centric. So like to have the challenge there keeps it alive for me and keeps it interesting for me. I've always said I always find Resident Evil more interesting when it takes place in a central location, like the Spencer Mansion, like the RPD. So, and whenever they expand out and go more action-centric, they lose me a little bit. So this isn't my favorite Resident Evil, but I don't think it ever really had a chance to be my favorite. But it's definitely just so high quality that it's up there. It's right there. Like top 3, top 2, for sure.
I gotta say, it's you might be upset at this, but yeah, I think it is the best Resident Evil that I played.
Oh, no, I'm not mad at that at all.
No, well, I should say that. That's not what you'd be angry about. My second favorite, close up to it, is Resident Evil 5. Not 2. I enjoy 5 so much, and this one is pretty similar to it in the sense that it's very combat heavy, but leagues better. I can objectively say not the best game. And
No.
the story and the tone of this one's way better.
Oh,
It
yeah.
actually creeps you out at certain points. It's Resident Evil still really trying to keep with that horror aspect to it. 2 and 3 obviously had it, and this one, though they obviously, like you said, action focused, it still has that scary element to it.
It's where I kind of wish Resident Evil had stayed. With
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4, the original, it got really campy and really cartoony. And while this game is still campy, it doesn't go cartoony. It doesn't become like just these cartoon characters come to life, like making jokes all the time and nothing is taken seriously. You're laughing at the game more than you're like, oh, from the game. Here, it's much more like you're not scared, but there is like a little creep. Like it'll make your hair stand up a little bit every once in a while. And you'll go, oh, I don't like this. Or you'll find coming up on the castle segment, there are characters on the later end of the game where you're like, ew. Oh, I really don't like you. Whereas before you were like, all right, what kind of joke character is this? But now you're like, oh, you're gross and disgusting. And I think a lot of the character work in this game is actually pretty good for a Resident Evil game. It's not like the Last of Us level of storytelling or character work here, but they do interesting things with these characters that I think has potential for sequels or future remake games. I think specifically, surprisingly, Ashley is actually an interesting character in this game, where I would like to see her again in future Resident Evil titles. Even if she was to, let's say, replace one of those side characters that we see in Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6. I don't think she should replace Sheva, but do we really need Helena? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think we could find sort of an interesting balance with that. And I think this game really just gives a whole lot of potential and a lot of intrigue that I have for what comes next. Even though I fully enjoyed and loved everything that I had here. The expanded, there's expansion on some levels. A lot of the level design kind of remains pretty true. But, in the areas where it was weaker, they expand on or make it more complex or add new levels to it, which is really, really appreciated, especially in the later parts of the game. And, some of the story elements have been expanded upon, and things that were always like sort of just kind of referenced or maybe said in a offshoot piece of media, like a comic book or a animated movie or something, gets addressed here in game in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of character inspiration from like Return of the Jedi Emperor Palpatine like type inspiration from stuff, which is really, really cool. Characters when you're the bosses that you fight, the boss fights and stuff, as you progress in the fight, like their character dialogue becomes more desperate and they start showing you shades of who they really are inside and stuff, which I thought was really, really fascinating. This game just has a lot more substance than the original game had. There's a lot more meat on the bone that I really, really like and I really, really appreciate. As someone who enjoys Resident Evil 4, the original, I can say like I really, really like this one. I want to say I love it, but I have to sit with it for a little longer before I do. One thing, and this is just for me, I don't like this trophy list. It requires a bunch of playthroughs, which at first I was like, oh yeah, not a problem. But the way they've set up their New Game Plus systems, it doesn't feel like it like the checklist of things it wants you to do isn't like I have to do all this right now, like I did with Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 3, where I had a lot of fun just replaying and redoing things quicker. This one is just kind of like hey, a lot of, like, if you like this game, you're probably going to replay it a couple of times. Here's some cool stuff you can do when you do eventually replay it. So it's like a game that, like, I'll keep on my dashboard for a long time, but I'm not, like, going to jump right into my New Game Plus right away with that. But that's just me. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a lot of, like, Resident Evil fans on Twitter be like, oh, no, I've beaten the game 4 times already. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. A lot of these people are journalists who have had the game for, a couple of weeks. But I'm like, oh, fuck, man. Holy cow. While I'm looking at the B footage here, which Connor, you can't see, maybe I should have switched it over. But the merchant is cool. Like he plays pretty much the same similar things. I liked him more in the original. Something about the line delivery in this one just wasn't in love with.
Not as snappy. Though I do like the references. He's like, "Oh, my back. The
Yeah.
years haven't been kind to us, I suppose."
Yeah.
So I did kind of add that element of like almost like he was a dimensional being or something like that. So yeah, even though I agree the original performance was more captivating with his voice lines, this one not as much.
Yeah.
Though still, like I said, done well.
And then
Especially the atmosphere he would have.
Are you doing all the like side stuff?
As I see them, yeah.
As you see them? Okay, but you're not like hunting them or whatever.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I
was doing a lot of like get all the treasures, complete as many quests as I could. I missed a quest early on in the village, and it like I had accidentally progressed past the point of no return, and I was like, damn it, because I was really hoping of getting that completionist trophy of like get everything in one run, but I messed it up early, so I was like, all right, never mind. But I just enjoy that they're there. They're really small, simple stuff of like literally like go shoot all the blue medallions like from the original game. Go shoot some rats. Go shoot 3 rats in a factory. You go, all right,
sell
cool.
some vipers.
Yeah, 100%. Or sell me some fish or something. You're like, okay, all right, sure. So like they're not like substantial, but they're fun and they're good ways to get more resources for trading and selling items and so forth, which is all appreciative and nice. The shooting ranges are really good. I like the shooting ranges a lot.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, and they get more complex and more fun as they go on, and some of them get kind of tough. To 100%, that is. And then I like all the like small things that they've done, like with the attaché case and the little like charms you get to like give you like little in-game bonuses and so forth. Those are all fun, little cute little things that they've added to just kind of sort of add more of a build. It's really light. It's literally like, oh, hey, you get 20% more ammo when you craft for handgun bullets. Or, hey, with this attaché case, you find more red herbs out in the wild than you would normally. And I go, all right, cool. I appreciate that. Cool.
It makes a difference.
Yeah. But it's not like, I'm not like cheesing the game. The game is still the game. Connor, talk to me. How are you feeling about all this gameplay stuff, man? You liking it a lot?
Oh, yeah, I'm loving it. It's very similar to Resident Evil 2. It's that foundation, but it's a lot more tight, which it makes sense because Resident Evil 2 was big on the survival element of things, scrounging for ammo, every little shot counts. And this
which I personally like more. But
I did like this one more because ammo management can be, it's not bad, but I just like being able to shoot my gun at these waves of enemies and be really in these really tense situations. Because frankly, fighting zombies in Resident Evil 2 would kind of get boring. Wow. In these ones, there's a lot more. Just the enemies are a lot more active and more of a threat. So that higher paced combat that comes with it, I just prefer slightly more. Which maybe lends to the point of me liking Resident Evil 5 as well.
Yeah, but, I'm 100% the opposite way. Don't get me wrong. I really really like this game, but like it's 100% like I don't know, man. I got to the castle and I started shooting dudes in the head, and I was like, this is the exact same stuff I was doing before. Like, and nothing's changed. Where like you're just mowing down mobs of enemies, whereas like in Resident Evil 2, every single zombie was a threat, Yeah. In this one, it's like, all right, what's 20 villagers? Nothing. Like, okay.
Yeah, but you also see that with Leon, like just how he compares in these 2 new remake games. You can tell, like,
he's so good.
This guy actually,
he is very good. He's so cool. Yeah.
He is. He's like he's done a complete 180 of a character, and it makes sense after what we saw in Resident Evil 2. You definitely get tough from that.
Well, even if you go back and like watch or play Resident Evil 2, like there is an arc and it makes sense and it tracks. Whereas like in the original game, it didn't track. Like these were there was a Resident Evil 2 Leon character and there's a Resident Evil 4. This one, it's like, oh, in Resident Evil 2, he was still doing the puns. He was still doing the quips and the one-lines, but they weren't as good and they weren't as often. And here, they're still not good, but like there's like it's a cheesy not good as opposed to like I can't believe you just said that. It's a really, Leon, all right, you little scoundrel, you. But yeah, I like that a lot.
They kept in that nice goofiness. Where'd everyone go? Bingo? It's that dog.
It's that dog.
I saw a little clip on Twitter. Did you know that if you have the sniper rifle in the beginning area of the village, when all them come at you waves, you could shoot the bell and have it ring and end that scenario early.
that's how these speedrunners do. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh man,
to
you
do it
just
from the
changed the whole intro of the game for me.
Yeah, you have to get on the roof to do it, but you can see it, and you could do it with other ones, but it's of course way easier with the sniper, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's
Just being
so
able to skip that.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciate about this game is they know all the things you as a player did in the original game.
Mhm. Yep.
For example, in that early village area, there's a big tower that you climb up, and when you climb up, a lot of players can kind of like camp that ladder and just kind of shoot dudes off the ladder or whatever. They've made it to where if you step off of that landing, you just fall right back, you fall through the floor. So you can't camp up there anymore. And I'm like, that's cute. That's really clever that you did that.
And it got me.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I can say is for players who have never played Resident Evil 4 before, can get an accurate feeling of what it must have felt like to play the game when it came out originally. Because
That fresh perspective.
when fans of the original game talk about it, I don't get it. Like, I just don't feel the thing. God damn it.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm a little sick, so I'm getting over some sickness. When fans of the original game talk about what they used to feel playing that game for the first time, I never understood it. They're always like, "Oh man, it's so crazy and hectic and low key, kind of scary and fun and exciting." I never really got that in the original game, playing it 15 years later. But now I do. Now it does make sense to me because it is creepy. It is hectic. I do feel like I'm getting swarmed from every angle. I always feel like I'm on the cusp of tipping the power balance, but I'm never quite there. Like, the enemy is always just a little tougher than I would just a little tougher than I am. To where it's like, oh, I have to try. Like, I always have to try. Whereas in the original game, I felt very quickly turned into, oh, I'm more powerful than them. I'm just bang, 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 bang all the time. Not a problem.
Easy and done. Yep.
I will say they added some gameplay twists to a couple of different enemy types, which I personally found kind of annoying. Very specifically, I'm talking in the castle when the dudes start wearing the robes. The red-robed guys are fucking annoying as shit.
Why so?
Do you want me to tell you, or
Sure, I don't really care about
So-
that little detail.
So the Las Plagas is a whole mechanic in the game where like heads will pop and then a giant monster will come out and you got to kill the monster or whatever, right?
Yep.
The red guys in the castle have like a little lantern and they start doing chants and stuff, which will, because Leon is infected with Las Plagas, give Leon a headache. So he'll stop and twitch and be, oh God, like, and he'll like flinch and you'll lose precious seconds in the middle of a combat. It also activates some of the Las Plagas in the other enemies around you. So like heads will start popping left and right all around you as you're suffering from your headaches. So everything just gets really hectic. And they have the habit of every time they put a red guy in a room, it's waves and waves of dudes. I'm talking like 20 dudes in one room. And I'm like, it's just too much. And I found it really, really annoying and frustrating.
It's gonna be hard when I have to deal with it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
Focus the red guy. Always focus the red guy. Real hard.
I'll bring out my gun. And just hit him right where it hurts.
You bring out your guns. Yeah.
Bring out my gun. Yep. Give him the old powwow.
Yeah. So that I found annoying, but it like as soon as I was past it, I was having fun again. But like there's these moments of frustration in this game. In our hype. After the hype review for God of War 3, I believe, Phil talked about Ragegate moments. And this game has a lot of Ragegate moments where it's just a bunch of areas that sort of test the player. And we're just going to throw more than they're capable of handling right now just to sort of like level them up in their minds, like get them more acclimated and stuff. There's a lot of that in this game. And I kind of found some of it kind of annoying after a while. And it was just like, why are we spiking the difficulty here for no reason? Like, it's just a room of dudes. If it was a boss fight, that's one thing. Like, the Salazar boss fight, I had a lot of problems with. But because it was a boss fight, I was more willing to accept its bullshit, even though I was really mad at it at the time. But as soon as I you memorize combat patterns, you get sort of a rhythm of how the boss moves. It's very From Software in that sense. What's interesting is like I don't know if the original game had this. It doesn't feel like it did. It kind of felt like it was kind of doing its own thing. But this game wears its influences on its sleeve, I feel. Like, where it's very... like, it takes a lot of influence from FromSoft games. Like your Dark Souls and stuff in terms of, like, tone, I think. And sort of aesthetic a little bit. It takes a lot of influence from Metal Gear. I think specifically Metal Gear Solid 3. And sort of just the Kojima-ness of the game's tone and sort of how the action plays out and how the character designs are. And how goofy the characters are, where they're taking themselves seriously, but, they're being campy and goofy at the same time. It's very Kojima. And I think on a gameplay level, they pull a lot of interesting influence from games like The Last of Us. Specifically in its UI, of course, where its UI is very Last of Us, but just the way sort of the guns handle and the guns feel kind of feels like I'm playing The Last of Us 2 again, which I thought was really, really interesting. Whereas, like, the original game kind of feels like its own thing, mostly because it was, like, experimenting with third-person cameras and third-person action shooter games when there really wasn't anything like that back in the day. And now that genre has been well established, so now it's just, let's take the best parts of all of these great games and shove them into one. And turns out you just get a really good game out of that, regardless.
I'm certainly addicted to playing it right now. I'll continue to do that until I beat it. And Phil has also started as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he's just gotten past the village segment. Like, the first village fight or whatever. Like, he's not very far in it. But, like, Resident Evil's not his big thing, but, I think he's enjoying the gameplay updates as opposed to the original game where he was not in love with that. But, yeah, I think what's funny is like, the Dead Space remake, I think, replaces the original game. And I think this one stands next to the original game. Like pick whichever one you want to play first. It doesn't matter. But it is interesting to go back and compare and contrast these two games. Whereas Dead Space, just play the remake.
Mm-hmm.
Like like, you can go back and play the original if you want, but it's more fun to play the remake. Whereas this one, like, if you're like, hey, I just beat the remake, how is it in comparison to the original? I'd say, well, go play it. It's on everything. So, and it's still fun and, kind of mostly holds up. Just be prepared for a step backwards. But, I think it's still perfectly valid to go back and play that original game.
So I have one last question.
What's that?
Which is better, Resident Evil 4 remake or Dead Space remake?
That's a good question.
2 new horror games came back.
Yeah.
Fighting when you'd expect them to.
Well, are you asking me, like, which should someone pick up first? Or are you asking me, like, just which one I liked more?
Go with both. Which one you liked more? First of all, which you like more? What would you think you recommend to people more? If you can even give it an answer at this time.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because it kind of comes down to taste. I think Resident Evil 4 is a better game than the Dead Space remake. Because I think a lot of the Dead Space remake is still rooted in that 2000... When did that game come out? 2008? Game design. Which kind of, holds it back a little bit. But that's still recent enough to where that original game still holds up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the original Resident Evil 4 doesn't hold up as well.
Right.
I think I liked I think I'm a personal fan of Dead Space more. But I did really like, that's not to take away from this, but like, and I think when all is said and done, Resident Evil 4 will probably land higher on my top 10 of the year than Dead Space. I'd be surprised if it didn't, but I really, really enjoyed my time with Dead Space. I had a lot of fun with Dead Space. And I think Dead Space did more, when you talk about its intensity director, it did more for survival horror as a genre than this game does. This game just gives you a really, really well-designed, well-polished survival action game, or action horror game, that's really, really fun to play. it's also like I spent so much time cramming for this review that I'm kind of sick of this game. Like just looking at the B-roll footage right now, I'm kind of like, ugh, no more, please, God, I'm done. So I think I've just overdosed on Resident Evil 4 right now. And if
Take
I
a
had,
step back.
yeah, if I had slow played it at my own pace that I would have liked, I'd probably would be much more excited about this than I am. But I don't get me wrong, I'm still excited. I still like this a lot. Like it's a damn good game. But at the same time, whereas, Resident Evil 2 offered you a completely new gameplay experience, this one just looks to refine the original game. So it's a lot of like, okay, yeah, this is Resident Evil 4 in some parts, and for better or worse, where I still think the first third is better than the last third, even though the island is more fun now than it was. But I still think, it's front loaded. Like all the fun is at the beginning of the game, and then it kind of peters off near the end. I still think it's too long. It's just now I don't have to go through 6 unnecessary mini bosses and weird gimmicky level design and really bad boss fights. Like Krauser was a terrible boss fight in the original game, and now he's awesome. Now he's my favorite. So it's sort of a pick and choose what you want, how you want. I just think this is overall just a great improvement from the original game. I really do like all the character work they did in this game. Like the story is still like it's a Resident Evil story, whatever. But like the characters are interesting. Ada Wong is interesting here, whereas before I found her a little one note. Here I'm like, oh, you're actually like you've got some intrigue in you. Luis is a great character in this game. Whereas before, again, last game I felt he was a little one note. Here he's got some more depth to him, and his story is a little more tragic this time around, and I appreciated that. Ashley, I talked about all of the villains are really, really layered in the limited times you get to talk to them and so forth. And any of the like gimmick things, quote unquote gimmick things that are carried over from the original here to here, rather, they don't play so much as gimmicks anymore. Like they feel a little more intrinsic to the experience this time around. Excuse me. I think of the mini boss fight where you have to freeze him, the really strong enemy type that you have to freeze him up. That like it played like a gimmick in the original game, and here it just kind of plays more naturally. Like it kind of makes sense here. So yeah, I'm as a fan of Resident Evil, I'm very happy with this game. As someone who wasn't a huge fan of Resident Evil 4, this did a hell of a lot to make me a fan of Resident Evil 4, and I definitely think it's totally worth full purchase, must play game of the year. And it's when all is said and done, and the dust settles, this game has a heavy chance at being my game of the year. We'll see where it actually lands, but I'm very, very impressed with the quality of game we have here. Connor, anything else you want to add on to your experience so far? Oh, you're muted, my friend.
I forgot I had done that. Not really, no. I really like this game, and I'm still looking forward to finish it and see how the rest of the game plays out, because from what you said and from what the original game was the same case, the first part of the game is the best. So when I actually play the other lesser good parts, well, maybe you'll have a different opinion. Maybe it won't be
the gap is way smaller. Like instead of like it being a huge gap, it's a much smaller gap in quality, in my opinion.
I was trusting it.
Huh?
I was trusting that it would be able to do that.
Oh yeah. It's a must play game, especially for Resident Evil fans. 100%. Before we wrap up here, Connor, of course, everybody's big conversation piece around this game is what next? What do we do next for Resident Evil? Do we just go for an RE9, or do we remake Code Veronica, Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1, 5, 6? Where would you as a fan like to see them go next?
I want to see what they do with 5. I'm assuming it's going to take on a very different thing, but I have to see it. I have to see what it's going to do.
I kind of do too, especially because like 5 and 6 are not as beloved, so you can take more liberties with it. Like, you don't need the exact same level design from 5, back. You can, like, totally revamp it all. I think the only thing that needs to happen is co-op. It needs to have co-op. And I think with the Mercenaries mode, we have an opportunity that's coming, like, in, like, 2 weeks. We have an opportunity to kind of play around and experiment with co-op in Resident Evil 4 here. But literally 5 with this tone and this gameplay, that would be a game for the ages right there. Oh, I would love that so much.
What if it's like Resident Evil 2 where you just choose which route you want to play, Sheva or Chris?
That wouldn't make any sense.
But they go on a mission.
I would honestly... go ahead.
And they get, like, separated, and it's a whole big thing.
No.
Between characters that don't know each other.
No. You need the co-op. I personally... I'm just not a fan of the more action-oriented... Let me rephrase that. I am a fan, but I like the more survival horror... Metroidvania level design-esque type stuff more from Resident Evil games. So I would like a break from the action-heavy title, and I would appreciate it if they went to, a Resident Evil Code Veronica, so that we could get Claire Redfield some more love, because her representation in the franchise is severely lacking. I would enjoy a Resident Evil 1 remake, but as we just reviewed the Resident Evil 1 remake from the GameCube era, a few weeks ago, like, I love that game, and I don't necessarily want a different version of that yet. But if it was bundled with like a Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1, I think that would be an interesting little combo piece that they could put together for us. But I would like us to jump to a more survival horror complex level design game, and then come back to an action game. And sort of bounce off from there. And then, if we're going to do a Resident Evil 9 at some point, sure, I'd be down for that. But I don't know, like, that could go in any direction they want.
They as you said, they do have liberty to do as they please. All I hope for is that 6, if it does happen, is just the same thing, but no co-op, and you take each of the characters having their own story. And
that would be too much.
Take out Jack. You take out Jack. You take out Jack. And maybe even do different combos.
I don't want that. I want a co-op experience. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for your Resident Evil 4 review. Thank you so much for watching and listening along. If you are watching from the Two Penny Games cast, remember, you can catch the show every week every week, Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time, youtube.com/@2pennygames, and mainstream podcast services of your choice. Remember to follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and twitch.tv/2pennygames, where we go live every Tuesday with our good buddy Phil, goes live and plays some video games, having some real gamer moments for you. Until next time, have a great time, and Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Luego.